Ще не вмерла України ні слава, ні воля.
Hi, it's Jonathan, and welcome to another video. Today, I'm continuing to show you a pro-Ukraine rally that I went to on February 22nd, 2025. On that day, in the run-up to the 3rd anniversary of the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine, the House of Ukraine and Shield of Freedom, two organizations in San Diego, California, held a rally in support of Ukraine. You saw the first 20 minutes of the rally in my previous video. Therefore, in this video, I'll show you another half hour of the rally, featuring speeches by an American and a Ukrainian, and two songs each performed by a young girl from Ukraine. Because Help is Needed, sung by Karolina from Mariupol, and Melody, played by Nastya from Kyiv. Now, without further ado, let's begin with this video.
Okay, do we have speakers? Robert, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex. Further, okay. Okay, here we are. So, yeah, thank you very much, Alex. And hello, everybody. The last time I was here, I wanted to talk about the bravery of the Ukrainian people. This is a subject that Alex covered a couple of weeks ago. But there was a lot of activity going on, and my speech was kind of long, so I decided to instead condense that speech and postpone that speech for another week. And but here I am today, Saturday, and I'm going to have to postpone that speech on the bravery of the Ukrainian people because there are other pressing issues that surfaced in the past week and a half that I would much rather address. The only thing I will say about the bravery of the Ukrainian people is that they are truly a very brave people for having endured this struggle against Russian aggression for what is now 3 years since the invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022, and also for having endured the takeover of Crimea and Donbass way back in 2014, 15, something like that. Anyways, what I want to talk about, or actually complain about instead, is recent commentaries made by our current President of the United States, Donald Trump, and our current Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth pretty much started this a couple of weeks ago when he openly declared that his opinion that Ukraine should relinquish all its territories currently under Russian control, and that it should abandon all hopes of being a member of NATO. Now that is the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard. I can't believe that the Secretary of Defense said that. Ukraine will never give up those territories, and they have to be a part of NATO when this war is over, because they need some kind of security for after the war that no country ever invades them ever again. In fact, Hegseth's commentary of how Ukraine should relinquish its territory reminded me a lot of what I've talked about in the past in these rallies. It reminds me a lot about what Neville Chamberlain did back in 1938 when he agreed to let the Nazi German dictator Adolf Hitler take control of Czechoslovakia. That he did that in exchange for what he referred to as peace in his time. Well, I can guarantee you that, well, first of all, there was no peace in his time. World War II occurred shortly after that because Adolf Hitler was encouraged to launch that war. And yeah, I can assure you that relinquishing territory by Ukraine is not going to guarantee any kind of peace in the future, because Putin is going to go after more and more of what he wants if he's rewarded for what he wants right now. Well, to make matters worse, later on, our president, Donald Trump, lashed out at the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, calling him a dictator, and also blaming him for starting the war that he's actually forced to fight right now. Now, this is outright hypocrisy. Volodymyr Zelensky is not a dictator. He was democratically elected in 2019 by the Ukrainian people, and he has, well, there's supposed to be an election right now at about this time in Ukraine, but there's no way they can hold that election today. For starters, 80% of the Ukrainian population, well, they do have the freedom to go to their polling stations and vote, but they have to worry about Russian bombs and drone missiles and everything else attacking them, so that is out of the question. And the remaining 20% of Ukrainian people just cannot vote because they are in the territory that is now occupied by Russia, the Crimea and the Donbass region. And I don't think the Russian authorities are going to allow the Ukrainians to vote for the Ukrainian president of their choice. In fact, I don't even think the Russians are going to allow the Ukrainian people to vote for a Russian leader, because they have been doing a lousy job of voting for having democratically elected elections within their own country. Vladimir Putin has held on to his power since 1999 through rigged elections. And the only time he allowed some other person to be president of his country was when he allowed Dmitry Medvedev to win that election, because he knew that he could control Medvedev like the puppet that he was and continues to be. So, also concerning blaming Volodymyr Zelensky for starting the war in Ukraine, well, Putin is the one who started the war back in 2014 when he took control of Crimea and Donbass, and he accelerated it when he invaded Ukraine. He tried to take over Kyiv. He failed miserably at that, but he's been killing people with a lot of missiles and drones ever since that date. So, yeah, the real dictator in this is Vladimir Putin. And I don't know why Trump supports him. Is he trying to press the reset button that Hillary Clinton was always talking about? Is he really like backtracking on his campaign promises? Well, I think I've ranted enough now. I just want everybody to provide your support, and as Alex mentioned not too long ago, to contact your congressmen to let them know that we need tougher legislation, tougher leadership when dealing with Russia.
Stand with Ukraine, guys. Stand with Ukraine.
Stand with Ukraine.
Stand with Ukraine.
Stand with Ukraine.
Sorry, Robert, for interrupting.
Can I say what?
Yeah, man.
Okay. So yeah, let me continue. I'm about to finish soon. Yeah, I just want everybody to contact your local congressman. We need leaders that can. We don't want leaders to appease a Russian dictator, just like Neville Chamberlain appeased Hitler back in the 1930s. We want a strong leader. This American personally wants a leader like Reagan, who stood up, who called the Soviet Union to tear down that Berlin Wall. This American wants to continue imposing sanctions on Russia until Russia finally gets the clue that they have to pull out of Ukraine and stop bombing the Ukrainian people. This American would much rather see our leaders negotiating with NATO about putting up a no-fly zone over Ukraine, just like the one that was used in Yugoslavia back in the 1990s that caused that war to end, because the Ukrainian soldiers need as much relief as possible. And this American wants that we in the United States honor the agreements that were made back in the 1990s when Ukraine voluntarily relinquished all its nuclear weapons in exchange for security, for protection from any kind of future attack. So again, I urge all of you to support the Ukrainian cause against Russian aggression. I again urge all of you to help out financially and economically whenever possible. Remember, the freedom that they are fighting for is the freedom that we have, and the freedom that we will always, I hope we will always be able to cherish. And what more can I say? Okay, yeah. There's one more thing I want to say. Please come tomorrow to the blood drive in Spring Valley to support the Ukrainian cause. If you're a healthy person, I encourage you to come and donate blood. And more details can be obtained by the people here. And well, Slava Ukraini, and God bless America, everybody.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you very much. Stand with Ukraine.
Stand with Ukraine.
Stand with Ukraine.
Stand with Ukraine.
Stop Putin. Stop the war.
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 What do we want?
Victory.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Victory.
When do we want it?
Now.
I have a dream.
I have a dream.
Ukraine will win.
Ukraine will win.
I have a dream.
I have a dream.
Ukraine will win.
Ukraine will win.
Stand with Ukraine.
Stand with Ukraine.
Thank you, USA, for standing with Ukraine.
Thank you, USA, for standing with Ukraine.
Our next song called "Бо потрібна допомога," which means in Ukrainian, because help is needed. Yes, Ukraine needs help. Ukraine needs help from whole civilized world. Ukraine needs help from the United States. Of course, without help from civilized world, Ukraine will not be able to withstand that horrible aggression, but is still standing up. So, бо потрібна допомога. Because help is needed. It's Karolina Stobina from Mariupol, city destroyed by Russian carpet bombing.
Борітися поперте, будь-які змови. І борітися поперте, все, що злі. Заспіваймо пісню за Україну, за її незалежність, за волю її. Заспіваймо пісню за Україну, бо потрібна допомога твоїй рідній землі. борітеся, поборете будь-які змови. І борітеся, поборете все, що у злі. Заспіваємо пісню за Україну, за її незалежність, за волю її. Заспіваємо пісню за Україну, бо потрібна допомога. Заспіваємо пісню за Україну, за її незалежність, за волю її. Заспіваємо пісню за Україну, бо потрібна допомога твоїй рідній землі, бо потрібна перемога твоїй рідній землі, бо потрібна перемога твоїй рідній землі.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава! Yeah, we think you can probably hear бо потрібна допомога, as I told you before, it means in Ukrainian. It means in Ukrainian because help is needed. But very last time we sing бо потрібна перемога. It means we need victory. Yes, Ukraine does not need ceasefire. Ukraine does not need stop of fighting by all means. Ukraine needs victory. Ukraine needs returning all its occupied territory back, including Crimea, including Donbass and Donetsk region. Ukraine needs victory. Ukraine needs justice for Russia. Ukraine needs Putin in jail. This is what Ukraine needs. We are not talking about ceasefire, you know, by all means. No, it's victory. Бо потрібна перемога. Victory. Okay, Ina? Давай отсюда.
Good afternoon, San Diego. Aren't we having a lovely day here? Well, right now in Ukraine, it's winter. In my hometown in Ukraine, right now, there is no heat. Okay. There is no heat, and in my hometown in Ukraine, for almost 3 years, there is no fresh water in the pipes because the water supply is obtained from the Dnieper River, and the point at which the supply comes out is controlled by Russia. Almost 3 years, they do not have fresh water. Almost every week, some town or other in Ukraine loses power and loses heat. In February, and it's not San Diego over there. And yet, right now, we hear from our politicians and our leadership that Ukraine does not need any more help, and that we helped Ukraine enough, and anyway, it's all their own fault. We also hear that apparently Zelensky was sleeping when our Treasury Secretary came to meet with Zelensky. Except he was not. There are pictures that they have met and they have talked. The problem is that right now Ukraine is being blackmailed. Right now Ukraine is being extorted. Right now our leadership is asking Ukraine to surrender its resources wholesale without even any guarantees of Ukraine's security. Except these guarantees were already given back in the 90s when Ukraine gave up its nuclear arsenal. Ukraine used to be a nuclear power. Ukraine chose to not be a nuclear power anymore because Ukraine was told that the United States and Russia are both going to ensure Ukraine's safety and security and territory. Yet it didn't happen. Yet Russia invaded Ukraine twice. First, It bit off a bunch of Ukrainian territory under false pretenses that that territory actually wanted to be Russia, which absolutely is not the case. I come from a Russian-speaking part of Ukraine. They did not want to be Russia. They did not want to live in a dictatorship, you see. Because Zelensky, despite what our president here says, is not a dictator. Zelensky was elected with pretty overwhelming margin of victory back in 2019. Ukraine cannot hold elections now because large territory of Ukraine, about 20%, is now a war zone or occupied. You cannot hold elections under martial law. What you can do, however, is still have your parliament running, which it does. You can still have your president making decisions, which he does. And you can still have people struggling and striving and wanting to be free, which they do. And it's just inconceivable and unconscionable that we here think that we don't have to help them. I have been a US citizen for a very long time now. I've lived here for 30 years. I left when Ukraine was barely a country. Yet, of course, I have still family and friends there. I still know people there. And I know how they feel. And I know that they don't even understand how such things can be happening. So please, please, my fellow Americans, because despite how I sound, I am in fact an American. Had a citizenship for quite a while. Please call your Congress people, call your senators, call your representatives. Ask them to stand against this extortion. Ask them to continue supporting Ukraine. Because a lot of that support is actually supporting American companies who produce things that Ukraine uses. They are not sending money in Ukraine as much as they're sending equipment that is made here, that is employing Americans, that is supporting American business. It is good for Americans to support Ukraine. It is good for the world to support Ukraine. It is good to the world to stop Putin. Please help us. Please continue remembering about Ukraine, caring about Ukraine, and asking for help for Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!
Hooray!
Героям слава! Stand with Ukraine!
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 Thank you, USA, for standing 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 with Ukraine!
Stop Putin! Stop the war!
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 Russia is a terrorist state!
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 Putin is a war criminal!
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 Putin is a nuclear terrorist!
Putin is a nuclear terrorist!
Last week we heard, unfortunately, from American administration that Ukraine started that war, not Russia. Ukraine. Ukraine started that war on February 24, 2022 by bombing itself, by blowing civilian apartments by itself. So we have next performer who is from Kiev, city which was hardly attacked by Russians that very first hours of the war. Her name is Nastya. She will say a couple of words and then she will play her violin, very famous melody by Ukrainian composer Mykola Skorik.
Hello, my name is Anastasia and I'm from Kiev. I saw the first bombs hitting the airport in Kiev. Oh, Okay. An hour I flee the war in Ukraine. An hour away of escaping the war, I saw a bomber flying through our way. And I'm not just a regular kid saying here that stop the war. I'm actually a kid who experienced that, and I wish it was over. Слава Україні! Protect Ukrainian kids. With no kids, no future. Thank you.
Slava Ukraini! So next time when you hear that Ukraine started that war, please think about Nastya. She is unfortunately a witness of those bombs and rockets just destroying city of Kiev where she lived with her mom. Just think about it. If somebody tells you Ukraine started this war, no. Russia started this war, and actually they did it not just 3 years ago. They started this war 11 years ago by annexing Crimea and by occupation of part of Donetsk and Lugansk region. So 11 plus years Ukraine is in war. So please help Ukraine. Stand with Ukraine. Stand with Ukraine. Stand with Ukraine. Thank you, USA, for standing with Ukraine.
Thank you, USA, for standing with Ukraine.
Putin is a war terrorist.
Putin is a war terrorist.
Putin is a war criminal.
Putin is a war criminal.
Stand with Ukraine.
Stand with Ukraine.
If you think that Putin sucks, give Ukraine a couple bucks.
If you think that Putin sucks, give Ukraine a couple bucks.
And seriously, to help Ukraine, please call your representative. Please give a call to your representative's office and ask to support Ukraine by all means, by accepting all necessary legislation, by supporting Ukraine both financially and militarily. Thank you.
To be continued in the next video.
Ще не вмерла України ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші воріченьки, як роса на сонці. Запанує мирне, браття, у своїй столиці.